I never believed my daughter when she said something was watching us from the trees. Now, as I write this with bandaged hands that barely work anymore, I understand that some truths are better left undiscovered. My name is Edward, and I'm 35 years old, or at least I was when this started 3 weeks ago. I'm a wildlife photographer from Detroit, spent the last decade capturing Michigan's natural beauty for magazines and conservation groups. I thought I knew these woods. I thought I understood what lived in them. I was wrong about everything. It began on a gray October morning when I received a call from Sheriff Morrison in Oscoda County. "Edward, we need your tracking skills," he said, his voice tight with something I'd never heard from him before. Fear. Something's been attacking livestock around the Huron National Forest. We found tracks, but they don't match anything in our records. I drove up that same day, my camera equipment packed alongside my camping gear. The sheriff met me at the ranger station, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He spread photographs across his desk, images of torn fencing, scattered wool, and tracks pressed deep into the mud. "What made these?" I asked, studying the prints. They were massive, maybe 7 inches long, with claw marks extending another 2 inches beyond the pads. "That's what you're here to tell me," Morrison replied. "We've lost 15 sheep in 4 days. Whatever it is, it's getting bolder." The tracks led northeast, into the densest part of the forest where old-growth pines blocked out the sky. I started my investigation that afternoon, following the trail for 6 miles until the sun began to set. The woods grew quiet, too quiet. No bird calls, no rustling of small animals in the undergrowth, just silence and the sound of my own breathing. I made camp in a small clearing, built a fire, and settled in to wait. Professional wildlife photography teaches you patience. I'd spent weeks in blinds waiting for a single shot. I could handle one night in the woods. Around midnight, I heard it, a sound that made my blood freeze. Not a howl, nothing like the wolves I'd recorded dozens of times. This was deeper, resonant, almost like a man screaming, but with an animal's fury behind it. It came from the east, maybe half a mile away. I grabbed my camera with the night vision lens and moved toward the sound. Every instinct screamed at me to stay by the fire, but curiosity and professional pride pushed me forward. I'd filmed grizzlies in Alaska, tracked mountain lions in Colorado. I could handle this. The forest opened into a ravine where a small stream cut through the rock. My night vision showed me the scene in shades of green, and that's when I saw it for the first time. It stood in the stream, hunched over something I couldn't quite make out. The creature measured at least 7 feet tall, covered in dark matted fur that seemed to absorb the moonlight. Its back was twisted, spine protruding unnaturally beneath the skin, and its limbs were too long, ending in hands that bore both fingers and claws. The head was the worst part. A wolf's skull stretched and elongated, jaw hanging open to reveal teeth that seemed too numerous, too sharp. I lifted my camera, hands shaking, and pressed record. The creature's head snapped toward me, and I saw its eyes, yellow, intelligent, filled with a hatred that felt personal. It dropped what it had been holding, the remains of a deer, and took a step in my direction. I ran. I'm not proud of it, but I ran like my life depended on it, because it did. Behind me, I heard the sound of something large crashing through the underbrush, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. I didn't look back. I just ran, my lungs burning, branches whipping my face until I burst into my campsite. The fire had burned down to embers. I threw on more wood, grabbed my satellite phone, and called Morrison. "I found it," I gasped. "Send everyone. Send them now." "What is it?" he asked. I looked at the footage on my camera screen, at that impossible thing staring back at me. "I don't know, but it's hunting." Morrison arrived at dawn with 6 deputies and 2 state wildlife officers. They looked at my footage with expressions that ranged from disbelief to horror. "This has to be fake," one of the wildlife officers said. "This thing doesn't exist." "Tell that to the thing I saw last night," I shot back. We organized a search party. Morrison wanted to put it down before it attacked someone's home. We followed the tracks from the ravine, moving in formation with rifles ready. The October air had turned cold, our breath misting in front of us as we pushed deeper into the forest. We found its den around noon, a cave hidden behind a fallen oak, the entrance barely visible through the overgrowth. The smell hit us first, Rot and death and something else, something wild. Inside, scattered across the cave floor, we found bones. Deer, raccoons, and what looked sickeningly like human remains, though Morrison refused to confirm it. "We seal this cave," he said. "Bring explosives, collapse the entrance, trap it inside." But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. The tracks leading away from the cave were fresh, made within the last hour. It wasn't home. That night, it came to town. The first call came from a farm 3 miles from where we'd found the den. The Hendersons had heard something attacking their barn. By the time we arrived, their prize bull was dead, torn open with a savagery that made the deputies turn away. And there, in the mud beside the corpse, were those massive prints. It followed us back, I realized. It tracked us. The attacks escalated. Every night, a new victim, a dog ripped from its chain, a horse found disemboweled in its stable. And always those tracks, leading away into the darkness, heading north toward the denser forest. Morrison organized hunting parties, 20 men, armed and determined. We split into groups, each covering a different section of the forest. My group consisted of myself, 2 deputies named Reeves and Patterson, and a local hunter named Jack Crow who claimed he'd seen strange things in these woods for years. "My grandfather told me stories," Jack said as we moved through the pines. "Said there were things in the old forest that weren't quite animal, weren't quite human. Said they came out in the fall, when the barrier between worlds grew thin." "Spare us the folklore," Reeves muttered. But I was listening, because what I'd seen didn't fit into any rational category. It existed in that nightmare space between classification, something that shouldn't be but was. We tracked it for 3 days. The temperature dropped each night, frost coating the fallen leaves, our breath hanging in the cold air. The creature stayed ahead of us, leaving taunting signs. A deer carcass here, claw marks on a tree there. It was playing with us. On the 4th night, it stopped running. We'd made camp in a small hollow, taking shifts on watch. I had the midnight shift, sitting by the fire with my rifle across my lap. Patterson and Reeves slept in their tents, while Jack had positioned himself on a rocky outcrop, watching the tree line. The attack came without warning. One moment Jack was there. The next, something massive grabbed him from behind and dragged him backward into the darkness. His scream cut off abruptly, replaced by sounds I'll never forget. Tearing, cracking, wet, and horrible. Reeves and Patterson burst from their tents. We fired into the darkness, muzzle flashes lighting up the night, but we hit nothing. The sounds continued for another moment, then stopped. Silence fell, broken only by our ragged breathing and the crackling fire. "We need to leave," Patterson whispered. "Now." But Reeves was already moving toward where Jack had disappeared, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. I followed against every instinct because I had to know. We found what was left of Jack 15 feet from camp. I won't describe it in detail. Some images should never be put into words. We ran, 3 grown men, armed and trained, and we ran like children fleeing a nightmare. Behind us from the darkness came that sound again. Not a howl, but something worse. A laugh almost, deep and gurgling and filled with malice. We made it back to town by dawn, half frozen and traumatized. Morrison mobilized everyone, state police, wildlife services, even called in federal agents. They brought in thermal imaging equipment, helicopters, tracking dogs. They turned that forest upside down. They found nothing. No cave, no tracks, no evidence beyond what we'd already documented. It was as if the creature had simply vanished. But I knew better. I could feel it out there, watching, waiting. The attacks had stopped, but not because the creature was gone. It had learned. It had adapted. It was being patient now, conserving energy for something bigger. I should have left Michigan, should have packed my equipment and driven back to Detroit and forgotten everything I'd seen. But I couldn't. The footage on my camera, those yellow eyes staring back at me, I needed to understand what I'd witnessed. I spent 2 weeks researching, diving into local history and folklore. I found stories, dozens of them, dating back to the lumber boom of the 1800s. Loggers who'd vanished in the night. Trappers found torn apart in their cabins. Native American legends about spirit creatures that walked the boundary between man and beast. Every few decades, the stories would surface, then fade away again. The pattern was clear. This thing wasn't new. It had been here for generations, perhaps centuries, and it always came back. I returned to the forest alone. Morrison had forbidden anyone from entering the woods, but I had to see for myself. I hiked to the ravine where I'd first encountered the creature, my camera ready, my rifle loaded with silver bullets that Jack's widow had given me, insisting that I take them. The ravine was empty, just the sound of water over rocks and the wind through the pines. I waited until dusk, then into the night, but nothing appeared. Maybe it was truly gone. Maybe the hunting parties had scared it deeper into the wilderness. I was about to give up when I saw the tracks. Fresh ones made within the hour, leading up the slope on the far side of the ravine. They headed south toward town, toward civilization, toward my home. I ran faster than I'd ever run in my life, calling Morrison as I went. "It's heading to Oscoda," I shouted into the phone. "Evacuate the town. Do it now." But I was too late. By the time I reached the outskirts of town, I could hear the screaming. The creature had come down from the mountains, emboldened by its previous successes, ready to claim larger prey. I found it on Main Street, illuminated by street lights, no longer hiding in shadow. It moved between buildings, a nightmare made flesh, its claws scraping against brick and concrete. People fled into their homes, locking doors that wouldn't hold against something that strong. Morrison and his deputies were firing at it. Bullets that should have dropped it, doing nothing but enraging it further. It swung at Deputy Patterson, and I saw him fly backward, his body crumpling against a storefront window. I raised my rifle, loaded with those silver bullets that I dismissed as superstition. The creature's eyes found mine across the street, and in them I saw recognition. It remembered me, the one who'd invaded its territory, the one who'd filmed it, the one who'd brought the hunters. It charged, 7 feet of muscle and fury, moving faster than physics should allow. I fired once, twice, the silver bullets striking its chest. It stumbled, let out that terrible not quite howl, but kept coming. I fired again, the bullet catching it in the shoulder. It was 10 feet away now, 5 feet. I could smell its breath, rotting meat and something worse. The 4th bullet hit its throat. The creature stopped, swayed, its eyes going wide with what might have been surprise. Then it fell, crashing to the pavement, its body already beginning to change. I watched as the fur receded, as the bones cracked and reformed, as the impossible anatomy restructured itself into something almost human. By the time Morrison reached me, I was staring at the naked body of a man I recognized. Thomas Warren, a recluse who'd lived alone in the woods for the last 30 years, who everyone assumed was just another eccentric hermit. "How is this possible?" Morrison whispered. I had no answer. I still don't. They took Thomas's body away for examination. The coroner found anomalies in his bone structure, his musculature, his DNA itself. Things that suggested he wasn't entirely human or hadn't been for a very long time. They found similar DNA markers in the bones recovered from the cave, suggesting he wasn't the first, wouldn't be the last. The town tried to return to normal. They buried Patterson with full honors. They rebuilt the storefronts. They told themselves it was over, that the nightmare had ended with Thomas Warren's death. But I know different, because 3 nights ago I heard that sound again. That terrible, not quite howl echoing from the northern forest. And yesterday morning, I found tracks in the frost outside my house. Massive prints, 7 inches long with claw marks extending another 2 inches. Thomas Warren had been in these woods for 30 years. But the stories go back centuries. How many others are out there hiding in the deep places, waiting for their chance to hunt? I'm writing this account as a warning. I'm leaving Michigan tonight, heading somewhere far from forests and mountains and places where old things still live. But I know I'll never truly escape. Every shadow will hold a threat. Every night will bring the memory of those yellow eyes staring at me across the ravine. The werewolf hunt is over. But the terror remains because I learned the truth that night on Main Street, the truth that will haunt me until I die. We're not alone in these woods. We never were. And the things that share this world with us are patient, intelligent, and hungry. I look at my bandaged hands. wounded when I tried to push that thing away from me in those final seconds before the silver bullet found its mark. And I see the scratches turning dark, spreading like veins beneath my skin. The doctor says it's just infection, that antibiotics will clear it up. But last night I felt my bones ache in a way they never have before. My senses seem sharper. I can smell things I shouldn't be able to smell. And when I look in the mirror, my eyes seem different, lighter, almost yellow in certain light. The werewolf hunt killed Thomas Warren. But what if the hunt was only the beginning? What if his claws carried something that bullets cannot kill? Something that spreads and transforms and waits for the next full moon? I'm leaving tonight, but I'm not sure if I'm running from the monster in the woods or the monster I'm becoming. Either way, I'm running out of time.